Our panellists are Nick Briscoe, the Country Manager Australia of Currency Cloud. Nick, come up while I read it. Give him a clap. Nick joined the business in January 2022 and brings with him more than a decade of experience in financial services, holding a variety of senior roles, leading revenue, technology and operation teams. Running Australia as Country Manager, he works with the wider APAC team to build out infrastructure to service new and existing customers, while also building on-the-ground teams to service banks, brokerages and fintechs. Next up, we have James Reid, the Global Head of Commercial at Send Payments, the Australian HQ'd international payments company. Yeah, I love the clapping, that's it. Here he is. See, this is the most enthusiastic room. I want us to win that over the next 2 days. This is where the party started and continues. With a background in partnerships in the payments world, with so much of Send's impressive growth coming from partnerships, James is a huge advocate for the power of working together to do more than for customers. And the TikTokification was a conversation we had a little earlier with Matthew from Visa. Well, here's someone who lives TikTokification. It's the Chief Commercial Officer of TikTok, Imelda Newton. She joined in October 2020. Yay, Imelda! Is responsible for the commercialisation of TikTok's industry-leading solutions, which now power some of Australia's largest banks and brands. Of course, I should say that this is TikTok with a C, not a K, but, you know, still incredibly cool. And what a great name, TikTok. Everyone must get terribly excited, I would think, initially, Imelda, as you work at TikTok, really. All these teenagers who suddenly zoom in and then sort of just fade out. Well, as part of a long career in technology for the financial services sector, Imelda has held senior roles at Equifax, both locally and here in the USA, SunGard and KPMG. To bring it all together, the seamstress of this amazing panel, we have Tanya Titman, the Chief Digital and Innovation Partner at BDO. Give her a hand. Yay, Tanya. She's a partner of BDO, a change specialist and educator and a problem solver with a passion for technology, and works with many startups and high-growth companies across the fintech sector through the BDO for Startups program, something she put together herself. The other important thing you need to know is the photo booth out there, sponsored by BDO. Go and take some snaps. It's kind of fun. Enjoy it. It's not that LinkedIn profile pic thing we've done in previous years. This time we're just letting our hair down, put on a t-shirt, have fun. Welcome our panel. Over to you. Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us today. So hoping that we will keep that upbeat mood going and have a really great discussion. Very excited to be here. As was mentioned in the intro, I am the Chief Digital and Innovation Partner at BDO. We have quite a strong focus on innovation, both internally and externally. And we've also had quite a long relationship with the fintech sector through a lot of the initiatives that we do across BDO. We're really passionate about startups. As was mentioned, I've built a startup program, so we kind of work with fintechs right from startup through to mature companies, and we're really excited to be associated with them. So thank you for having us here today. I've got a great panel with me, and we're going to be exploring this intersection between innovation, which is very much my passion, and integration. So one of the things that I just want to do before we kick off is allow everyone to give us a quick informal introduction about their platforms, what they do, just so we get a bit of context for the discussion that we'll have here today. So I'll start off with you, James.
Yeah, thanks. So Send Payments, we're an international payments provider. We essentially help people and businesses to move their money around the world. The mechanism by which we tend to do that is partnerships. So we very much meet our partners where they are and give them the opportunity to add international payments into their offering, whether that's a straightforward sort of referral mechanism, right the way up to fully embedded native API-driven solutions.
Awesome. Thanks, James. Imelda.
Thanks, Tanya. Well, TikTok, as Simon pointed out, TikTok with a C, not a K. So in a nutshell, we're a platform company. We have proprietary technology that enables lending decisions to be made cost-effectively, efficiently, in a really responsible way in accordance with responsible lending legislation. And we now help power an increasing number of brands, in particular in the home loan space.
Awesome. Thanks, Melda. And Nick?
Yeah, CurrencyCloud is a provider of infrastructure and specifically cross-border payments infrastructure and multi-currency accounts for banks, brokerages and Fintechs. We've been around for just over a decade and were acquired by Visa back in 2021. So we're a Visa subsidiary.
Awesome. And great presentation that we just had before the break. And we've had some really interesting stats, I think, presented today, so we might even tap into some of those. I think one of the things that I guess we've discussed as a panel coming into today, that there has been quite a change in the current economic climate. We're now in a situation where we have rising interest rates, we have a really sort of challenging investment environment. And one of the things that often change brings is a need to innovate, to be able to sort of push forward in different directions. But there's also this opportunity of integration. So should you actually be leveraging off those distribution channels of others and integrating into their technology? So there's this real intersection and I guess decision to be made of where you invest scarce funds in order to grow the business. So I'm going to start with James in terms of just sort of giving us his views around this sort of intersect between innovation and integration, and probably from your experience, James, what you have seen has worked for you.
Yeah, cool. So I think just firstly to address your point around innovation and disruption, it's not an easy thing to do in this pretty tightly and highly regulated world. I think what we've seen over the last few years in particular is specifically sort of larger banks looking at making sure they've got good diversification across their portfolios, which means that sort of disruption and that innovation is not always easy to come by. So I think, yeah, firstly, it is not straightforward, and it does carry that element of risk. I think when we look at the conversation of innovate versus integrate, again, not a straightforward discussion. It really depends on what you're trying to do as a business and a number of different factors, such as speed to market, cost to market, customer ownership, IP ownership. All of these sorts of things need to be factored in when you think about whether you innovate or integrate. Send Payments, we do both. So we've got our upstream partners, the likes of CurrencyCloud, who we work with really, really closely. Now, without a CurrencyCloud, we wouldn't have made it into this world. They give us that underlying infrastructure. They gave us speed to market, which 5 years ago was really important when we needed to get up and running quickly and start to bring money through the door so we could sustain ourselves. We also work with JP Morgan, who provide that global banking infrastructure for us as well. So we integrate with those providers. We then architect our platform in such a way that allows our consumers via API to integrate themselves so that they can innovate for their customers, and so on and so forth. So the chain kind of goes on. So it's very much that integrate to innovate to integrate to innovate. So there's no really real straightforward answer for that. And again, I think it depends where you're at as a business. Sometimes you just need to get to market. Sometimes you need to take advantage of an opportunity or competitive in the market, which sometimes you need to do that integration up front, and then maybe look at how you can rebuild in such a way that makes you modular by nature and gives you that underlying IP for yourself, so that you can make that available to other customers. Last piece on that, I think, is what you're trying to achieve as a company. I think a lot of people in the room, a lot of people at this conference, we startups, scale-ups, ultimately, who's not looking at some sort of exit event over the next few years? And what that exit and liquidity event looks like sometimes makes those decisions for you. So are you looking at a trade sale? Are you being absorbed by a large corporate, large bank? That underlying IP and infrastructure, owning that is incredibly important, because often that's where you get so much value from that liquidity event. Conversely, look at an IPO or a listing, potentially that's slightly different, because actually maybe the commercial attractiveness of the company is maybe more important. So rather than spending all that time building, you could have been sort of out there actually making money and getting it through the door. So lots of different considerations.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that, you've touched on that strategic sort of purpose of the exit strategy as well, because I think sometimes that's sort of forgotten in those stages of trying to build the business. So being really strategic about how you're going to exit and having that in mind, I think is really critical for that path. You also touched on, I'm going to stick with you just for a moment and drill into another couple of things you said. So you talked about the integration piece and I guess partnering with some of those people, and I'm keen to understand how difficult it is to establish those relationships. Were there some challenges that you found along the way in terms of building those relationships, or even choosing your partners that you were going to work with? What did that look like?
Yes, lots of challenges. A lot of good partnerships ultimately live and die in a boardroom, unfortunately, where pen is put to paper, and there isn't necessarily that engagement from where that deal is done right through the operational aspect of that partnership to really bring it to life, making sure everyone's well engaged, incentivized, educated in the right way in order to do that. So I think that's one of the main challenges that I've certainly seen in not a hugely long career in partnerships, but that partnerships often will flop because of that reason. So the way that we look at partnerships is very much as a partnership. I think that partnerships term is very much overused. I think there's confusion there between partnerships and clients. Our angle is very much to partner with those businesses to bring something to life which really adds good value to their service offering, to the extent where it's not uncommon for us to look at actually writing in an innovation pool into our contracts from a revenue standpoint. So actually putting money aside as we make money together as a partnership to commit to keeping on doing more for that partnership and more for ultimately those end consumers.
Awesome. No, thanks for sharing. I think there's some really great tips there. Imelda, I'm going to move to you next. In terms of that intersection between innovation and integration, I'm really keen to sort of understand if you've got some case studies or experience, centred around how do you keep it very customer-centric? How do you kind of make this work? Would love to hear some of your experience.
Yeah, thanks, Tanya. I think very much for us, it's not a case of innovate or integrate. It's very much, one is an enabler of another. So you can innovate by integrating into your services. I think given we're in Melbourne, I'll give a nice Melbourne experience of a case study, and I think that is Up. So for those in Melbourne, Up has a very strong loyal customer base, and those customers had an expectation that Up would help them on their home ownership journey. And that was everything from ensuring or giving them an idea, how ready are you to even apply for a home loan? And could you go to an auction and bid with confidence? And in the case that the applicant is not ready for a home loan experience, what do they need to do in order to get ready? So Up had this expectation. Their customers were quite vocal about telling them that. So they took the Up experience and skills and expertise in building what they're very well famous for, and that's user experience. They then came to TikTok and said, right, how can we make this experience happen? So coupled that with our capability for affordability, serviceability, and customer nurturing capability, and then from that innovated and created what, I may be biased, but I think it's the most innovative pre-approval experience that's actually out there in market. It's known as the Home Zone. If you're not a Up customer, go check out the Home Zone.
Awesome, thanks for that. Nick, moving on to you. Now, I mentioned earlier we have experienced quite a changing sort of economic landscape at the moment. I'm keen to understand from what you see what impact that is having on innovation in this fintech sort of sector.
Yeah, it's massive. Obviously, interest rates normalising has been the biggest change that anybody's sort of seen in this generation in terms of financial markets. I think it's making the decision a little bit more easy for a lot of people about that innovate versus integrate. It's typically a lot cheaper to integrate and take on an external provider Whereas I think when money's free, sometimes you get the vanity projects where they go out and build something that's not necessarily a core discipline, which always entails operational and financial risk. So we're at a really interesting phase as well. And I think really interesting, we have a lot of conversations with banks globally. And you know, I didn't coin this, but one of my colleagues said it's almost like the Empire Strikes Back, because what we're seeing now is the banks are really looking for a way to respond to what FinTech has done over the last decade and the strides that have been made. So the banks are out there thinking very seriously about what their strategy is and how they compete in our world in cross-border payments, how they compete with the likes of Wise and Revolut, and you know, how they respond to that challenge that's there. And I think they're at a phase as well in banks where they sort of look at FinTech and realise that it's on the ropes a little bit and a little bit challenged in the environment. So they're sort of seeing this their opportunity to strike back.
So it's a much more challenging environment for those new and sort of upcoming fintechs at the moment, as opposed to, you know, I guess the investment that the larger, more traditional organisations might have. What does that mean, sort of looking forward in the industry?
Yeah, I think for more mature fintechs, it's got a little bit easier. I don't know if you think this as well, James. It's sort of some of the competition has fallen away. It's not as sort of ruthlessly competitive. So for more mature organisations, it's probably become a bit easier. And I think it is the resource constraint potentially will dampen down some innovation from happening. But and again, James and I have spoken about this a lot. But ultimately, the good ideas rise to the top, and those businesses will continue to succeed and prosper.
Yeah, thanks. I think innovation generally is hard. I live it every day. I often describe it as pushing against the tide. You're constantly challenging people, you're constantly trying to move things forward, and it's often exhausting. There's lots of challenges that come with it. Imelda, for you, I'm keen to understand what sort of challenges you might have faced. You're in that sort of emerging space. You've obviously done some really interesting, innovative things. Talk to us a little bit about the challenges and how you've managed to overcome them.
Yeah, agree. Plenty of challenges for everyone. I think the challenge was not so much for TikTok. What we found was it was the internal challenges at some of the organisations that we were dealing with. And what we found in those organisations, there is at times different business areas will have different objectives, different priorities. So if you think about business line owners and P&L owners, they want to have speed to market. They want to get out there fast and start realising benefits. Internal tech teams, they like to build. They like that control of delivery and having control of that build. And then, of course, back to those business line owners and the P&L owners, they actually want to de-risk that tech delivery and build and want to de-risk the impact of change on their business. So when you have those conflicting views, I thought the way we overcame that was to be showing these organisations tangible results and tangible outcomes that they can actually achieve. So you're showing them the proof points. We did that at TikTok by having our own home loan business. So we live and eat and breathe all of those real life problems with home loans. So we understand the problems our customers and partners are trying to resolve. We then find it's really good to work with the partners and identify, well, what are those core capabilities and core skills that they already have, and how do you best put those to use? And then I think the final factor is to encourage your partners to always, firstly and foremost, focus on that goal that they want to achieve at the end. Keep that in mind and then work backwards to come up with the solution. Don't come up with what they think is the solution first and turn up with a, for want of a better word, laundry list of requirements. Because that can be a way that's really limiting to the innovation that they could achieve.
Thanks. Nick, I'm just going to put a question to you, I guess following on from our last session. It was mentioned around generative AI, and you know, this is one of those pieces that you might have a really clear path for innovation moving forward, and then something like that hits us, and all of a sudden all the priorities change and change really quickly. Like, has that had an impact for you, and what has that looked like?
Look, we are users of it, but we probably haven't seen any massive impact, I would say, in the payment space just yet. I think people are sort of trying to figure out what they're doing, and drafting emails and making that more efficient is an obvious first choice because it's an easy and accessible way. But yes, we haven't seen any sort of major impact from that just yet.
James, what about for you?
I think it's something that we talk, similar to Nick, we talk about it internally. It's something that we know we have absolutely, our product teams are absolutely thinking about how they build now and how they factor that into it. It's written into our OKRs as it stands at the moment to obviously look at those disruptive technologies and ensure we are forward thinking with those sorts of things. But again, past its kind of obvious applications, we haven't seen great use for it yet. I think it's certainly as we look at we're looking at redocumentation of our APIs, and it's something I can tell you it's been hugely useful for that process. But outside of that, again, we haven't seen any broad sort of use cases outside of that yet.
So, James, I guess on that sort of topic of the future and where we're heading, where do you see, as a result of everything that's happening at the moment, where are those opportunities in the future for fintechs?
What we've seen over the last, actually many years, I guess, is a disaggregation of services. I think that's kind of the right word for it. And I think we've seen lots of sort of single stream service providers coming onto the market doing one thing really, really well. And I think consumers and businesses have actually been happy to suffer having multiple different roofs. You only have to look at your phone and see how many different applications you've got for so many different things to see, people are happy to use multiple different things for different use cases. I think that applies in business as well. So different providers for KYC, onboarding, domestic payments, international payments, point of sale, acquiring, issuing, all of these. There are providers for every single one of those. What we're seeing, and this was mentioned in one of the opening discussions, was in Asia, particularly with WeChat, what you've got there is super apps, and it's incredible, really. Like, there are some unbelievable statistics around the amount of times that somebody will intersect with those apps over the course of a day. And whilst I don't know if we'll see that level of domination in this market, what I do think is we're definitely seeing that reaggregation of services into single experiences. And in this market, actually what we're seeing, some of the banks have got really good digital experiences, and what that's meaning is some of the larger ones who are a little bit behind are actually looking at ways in which they need to get themselves together and potentially integrate, fintechs like people in these rooms into those services. So I think, we'll continue to see that reaggregation. That brings obviously huge opportunities from partnerships, from an acquisition standpoint, for everyone in this room.
Yeah, and Nick, what about from your perspective in terms of the impact that you see innovation, integration sort of happening, and the evolution of this industry project forward into the future? What do you think those opportunities look like?
Yeah, I definitely agree with James. I think that horizontal expansion for fintechs has not really been a feature of the market. The super apps haven't sort of gained that dominance here in Australia that they have in Asia, but I can see that changing. Because I think more and more apps, or more and more fintechs will need to expand their product suite in order to service customers and gain more wallet share. And to James's point as well, as much as people will like to criticise the banks, here they do have a very, very capable offering and a digital-first offering. So it's an interesting part of the Australian market. And so obviously we've sort of seen some of the challenger banks have not succeeded so easily as they have in the UK, as an example.
Yeah, thanks. Now, we're just about out of time. I just want to put one more question to each of you, and for you to potentially think about yourselves at the start of your journey. Just some words of advice that potentially you can offer up for any aspiring people in this industry that, in terms of how you might have reimagined this journey, or how they can actually take advantage of this dynamic landscape that we're in at the moment. Some final words of advice from you, James.
make decisions. Make them quickly, make them with conviction. I think we've been very guilty on sitting on decisions, and by the time you've sat on a decision for such a length of time, drops to the bottom of the to-do list or into the too hard basket, you may as well have made the wrong decision. Gone down that path with conviction, come back on yourselves, made the right decision, because chances are you've still done it quicker than if you'd kind of sat on it for an indeterminate period of time. So that's what we've found. Just conviction, make decisions, and it's not. There's no right or wrong in this world. So yeah, that's kind of me.
Imelda?
I think integration is a great way for you to, achieve those goals and dreams that you're trying to achieve. But I think when you're choosing those partners that you want to integrate, make sure you really do your due diligence. Make sure they're financially sound. You're going to be relying on these partners, that you want them there for the long haul, and make sure you're establishing what is real and what is not real.
Thanks, Imelda. Nick?
I'd probably say stay curious, because there's so many people doing so many interesting things, and coming to events like this, I think, is fantastic, right? You learn so much about different parts of the industry, the fintech industry, and I certainly think working at Currency Cloud, it's kind of a unique view because we see so many different customer verticals. So stay curious.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to James, Imelda and Nick for your contribution today. Really great discussion, and I hope everyone has enjoyed that panel discussion exploring this world of innovation and integration. I guess baseline message is it's not one or the other. I think it is a combination of both, and that's very much a consistent theme across this panel. Has been really great working with you and putting this together, and please join with me in thanking our panel today.
Thanks.